Inigo walked back through the village with slow steps, the path quiet and empty now that the villagers had returned to their routines. The wildflowers from the little girl were still tucked gently into the crook of his arm. His other hand rested near the Glock on his hip, his first weapon, the one that had saved lives. But as he looked down at it, it felt small now. Not just physically but symbolically. That Glock had been the beginning. A starter pistol in a world that demanded more firepower. He wasn't some scared noob anymore. He had survived his first real engagement, and now he was ready to gear up like a proper FPS main. Back in the inn, the room still smelled faintly of wood smoke and clean sheets. Inigo dropped onto the bed and let out a breath. Then he whispered, "Open shop." His HUD flickered into life, bright blue holographic panels expanding in his vision with a soft hum. He needed more. More firepower. More reliability. More freedom. He exhaled and muttered, "Open shop of freedom." Primary weapon, assault rifle slot. He scrolled through the familiar selection. The SCAR-H and FNFL were tempting with their raw power, but he knew what worked for him. Fast handling, low recoil, tight control. His eyes landed on it. M4A1 5.56 NATO. Reliable. Precise. The bread and butter of freedom. Cost, 150 tokens. Purchase confirmed. M4A1 added to inventory. Red dot sight equipped. Vertical grip auto included. He grinned as the rifle materialized in a shimmer of light. Matte black, clean lines and just enough modular attachment rails to make a Call of Duty vet cry. He ran a hand along the body. "Hello, beautiful." Sidearm, pistol slot. Time to retire the Glock for real. Desert Eagle .50 AE. Excessive? Absolutely. Effective? Hell yes. Cost, 110 tokens. Purchase confirmed. Desert Eagle added to inventory, chrome finish variant included. Inigo gave it a spin and holstered it at his thigh. "It's ridiculous," he said to himself. "And that's why I love it." Tertiary weapon, shotgun slot. He scrolled past the double barrels, paused on the 870 and stopped at exactly what he needed. M1014 semi-auto shotgun 12 gauge. Built for war. Eats meat bags for breakfast. Cost, 180 tokens. Purchase confirmed. M1014 added to inventory. 8-round tube magazine loaded with buckshot. This one was going to ruin anything that got close. Inigo gave it a test pump, hearing the satisfying VE that said, "Don't." Armor and apparel. Time to look the part. Combat uniform, urban tactical set. Includes ballistic vest, utility belt, gloves, boots, reinforced cargo pants, tactical hoodie. Cost, 500 tokens. Purchase confirmed. Combat uniform equipped. He watched as the old clothes vanished, replaced by sleek, practical gear. The fabric hugged his form without being restrictive. Light armor plating across the chest, elbow and knee guards, and a sheathed combat knife on his left thigh. Then came the system notification. Perk unlocked. Weight reduction. Carried gear weight reduced by 50%. He jumped lightly in place. No drag. No bulk. Despite carrying a full combat load, it felt like he was just wearing gym clothes. Now that's what I call a cheat code. Ammunition and mags. He backed out of the weapons menu and tapped into the ammo packs tab. Time to feed his new toys. 5.56 NATO, x 120 rounds. Standard loadout for the M4A1. Cost 35 tokens. .50 AE x 50 rounds. Heavy recoil, heavy damage. Perfect for the Desert Eagle. Cost 40 tokens. 12 gauge buckshot x 30 shells. For the M1014. Close range nightmares incoming. Cost 30 tokens. Purchase confirmed. Ammunition distributed to mag pouches and sling carriers. All weapons fully loaded. Spare ammo stored securely in vest compartments. Total tokens spent, 105. Purchase confirmed. Ammunition added to inventory. Auto stored in tactical vest pouches. Final inventory check. M4A1, equipped. 5x 5.56 NATO magazines. Desert Eagle, equipped. 4x.50 AE magazines. M1014 shotgun, equipped. 30 shells. Combat tactical set, equipped. Combat knife. Remaining balance, 1763 tokens. Still plenty left for future shopping. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror. What stared back wasn't a gamer anymore. He looked like a one-man PMC. And damn, he looked cool. Inigo gave himself one last glance in the mirror. The matte black M4A1 slung across his chest. The chrome-plated Desert Eagle gleaming at his thigh. The M1014 resting across his back. The combat gear fit snugly, molded to his frame like it was made for him. And the look. Ew. But also, not subtle. Yeah, he muttered, turning sideways. No way I'm walking around like this in town without scaring people. He imagined stepping out of the inn dressed like this. Farmers would freak. Children would cry. And the town guards? They'd probably accidentally stab him. His hand flicked open the HUD again. There had to be a solution. Inventory options. Equipment visibility. There was. Toggle concealment mode, on. A ripple of blue light passed over his gear. The rifle shimmered, then vanished from sight. The shotgun followed. His Desert Eagle knife, extra mags, all gone to the naked eye. Then came the notification. New feature unlocked. Quick draw. Allows immediate manifestation of hidden weapons with mental command or combat reflex. Draw time, instantaneous. Cooldown, none. Now we're talking, Inigo said, eyes gleaming. Civvy by day, operator by surprise. He tested it. With just a thought, the M4A1 shimmered back into view, materializing in his hands with a soft zap of blue energy. He held it for a moment, then willed it away. Gone again. Like pulling weapons out of an invisible armory. Okay, that's actually busted, he grinned. His fingers itched with excitement. He wasn't just some dude with a gun anymore. He had a loadout, a system, and now, stealth. With a quiet chuckle, he turned and opened the window, letting in the mid-morning breeze. Outside, Valebrook was already moving again. Now he wondered, what should he do at this point? Sure, he could just simply stay here and live his life by fulfilling a quest in this town, but that would be boring. Maybe it's time to leave and go to the big city. That's a good idea. Inigo found Garrick just outside the forge, hammering down a bent horseshoe with slow, careful strikes. The old soldier looked up as Inigo approached, tilting his head slightly at the sight of the teen's confident stride and new, sharper aura. Looking confident today, huh? I have an image to keep now since I am the hero of this village, Inigo said, chuckling. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then stepped closer. Hey, I've got a question, he said. Where's the capital? Garrick raised a brow. You thinking of leaving already? Not leaving, Inigo replied. Just moving forward. The older man leaned on his hammer, wiping sweat from his brow. Capital's called Alandra. East of here. Big, busy, way more complicated than Valebrook. You'll need a coin, a travel pass, maybe a few favors. Luckily, you have those three, as the village of Valebrook will provide it for you. Is that true? Thanks. Let's go meet the elder. Inigo immediately followed Garrick towards the elder's house, where hopefully he would get what he needed to go to the capital city. Well, they should, right? After all, when it comes to debt of gratitude, they have a huge one on him. The elder was already waiting by the doorway when they arrived, her figure framed by the warm glow of the hearth behind her. Her eyes swept over Inigo, lingering briefly on his posture and the calm expression on his face. You've come with purpose, she said. Inigo bowed his head slightly. Yes, ma'am. I seek passage to the capital. Alandra. She nodded, then stepped aside. Come in. The same quiet warmth from before filled the room, though this time there was a weight of preparation in the air. A small satchel and 2 scrolls sat neatly atop her desk, beside a sealed envelope bearing the village's crest. We anticipated this, she said plainly. Your actions have earned you more than words. Inside the satchel, you'll find a merchant's travel pass, a letter of endorsement bearing the signatures of our council, and 50 silver coins for your expenses. Inigo blinked, then stepped forward with care. That's more than I expected. I'm grateful. The elder gave a faint smile. Consider it an investment. We believe you'll make an impression far beyond our village. Garrick shifted his weight beside the fireplace. A merchant caravan leaves for Alandra at first light. I'll be accompanying it. You'll come with me. You're going, sir? Inigo asked, glancing at the older man. Garrick gave a small nod. Someone's got to keep an eye on the road, and you. Besides, with the grain shipments heading out, We'll need more than farmers guarding the wagons. Inigo accepted the satchel and scrolls, carefully storing them in his inventory. Understood. I'll be ready. The elder stepped forward once more. The capital is not like Valebrook. It is faster, colder, less forgiving. But it is also where the real currents of this world move. Be careful who you trust. I will, ma'am. Outside, the sounds of loading wagons and restless horses echoed across the square. Merchants moved with quiet urgency, tying down barrels and sacks, checking wheels and harnesses. The caravan was already coming together. As they made their way back to the inn, Inigo turned to Garrick. How long is the journey towards the capital city? 2 to 3 days, Garrick answered, his tone even. Depends on weather, road condition and luck. We'll make camp at night. And the road. Garrick gave him a sidelong glance. Bandits. Not always, but often enough. That's why the caravan pays for armed escorts. This time they'll have me. And you. Inigo nodded, his expression calm. Then we'll be prepared. A day later. 50 tokens received from Daily. New Balance, 1813. Inigo sat at the edge of the inn bed, already fully dressed in his combat uniform, boots laced, vest snug against his chest. The HUD flickered once before minimizing itself, leaving him in the quiet of the early morning. Outside, the village stirred, slow and sleepy but with purpose. The smell of dew and old wood mixed with the faint scent of hay and horses. Somewhere a rooster crowed. He stepped out into the square with a steady pace, the satchel hanging off his shoulder. The concealment system kept his weapons hidden from sight, though the Desert Eagle's comforting weight still pressed against his thigh. At the far end of the square, the caravan was already assembled. 5 wagons loaded with sacks of grain and bundled goods stood in a loose line, oxen huffing lazily under the reins. A few armed men double-checked the carts. Archers, a spearman, even a guy with a long sword taller than his own back. Garrick stood near the front wagon, issuing brief orders to one of the guards before spotting Inigo. Right on time, Garrick said, giving a slight nod. Inigo returned the gesture. Yes. The older man motioned toward the second carriage, a closed wooden cart with curtained windows and padded seats. You'll ride in that one with me. Not exactly royal treatment, but it's better than sitting on sacks of barley. Inigo chuckled lightly and climbed into the carriage. It was his first time riding in one and he expected it to be creaky, uncomfortable and bumpy. But the moment he stepped inside he was surprised. The padded interior was clean and simple with just enough cushioning to make it tolerable. Garrick had already taken the window seat, one leg resting over the other, a small canteen by his side. Inigo settled across from him. The carriage swayed gently as the driver climbed aboard. A sharp whistle followed and the caravan began to move. You ever traveled this far before? Garrick asked, eyes watching the trees slip by through the window. Inigo shook his head. No, sir. First time. Closest thing I've had to this was loading screens between zones. Garrick raised a brow but didn't question it. Well, get used to it. The road's long and we won't be riding in silence the whole way. 3 days if we're lucky. And if we're not? Inigo asked. 2 things to worry about, Garrick said, his tone sharpening. Bandits who want what we carry. And creatures who don't care what you carry. Either way we stay alert. Inigo leaned back against the wood paneling and looked out the curtain. 3 days to Alandra. 3 days to see what the world truly looked like beyond Valebrook. He couldn't wait. After all the Isekai anime he had watched always had that arc. The capital city. A place where the true plot began. Where nobles stirred the pot, adventurers found fame, and mysterious girls with tragic pasts inevitably crossed paths with the protagonist. Maybe he'd meet someone like that. Maybe not. Either way, Alandra wasn't just a destination. It was the next level. He tightened his grip on the window's wooden frame as the caravan rumbled forward. Whatever awaited him there, be it politics, danger, or destiny, he was no longer the same player. He was armed. He was ready. The carriage rocked steadily as it rolled down the uneven dirt path, the wheels creaking softly with each turn. Inigo sat with one arm braced against the side wall, the other resting atop his knee. Outside, the forest blurred past, green and gold, patches of light filtering through the canopy above. It had only been an hour since they departed Valebrook and he was already feeling it. This is rougher than I thought, Inigo muttered. He leaned back against the padded wall again. It wasn't exactly painful, but the constant vibration beneath the wheels, the occasional jolt from potholes, and the general lack of suspension made it a far cry from anything he was used to. Back home, he'd ridden buses with air conditioning, caught rides in taxis with smooth suspension and Spotify playlists. Even the worst traffic in Manila came with honking horns and street food at every stoplight. Here, the soundtrack was creaking wood, rustling trees, and oxen snorting with effort. He looked around the interior again. No cup holders. No phone charger. And definitely no Wi-Fi. Yet, it wasn't all bad. There was something strangely peaceful about watching the world go by without a screen in front of him. Birds called from the trees and the sky was as blue as a digital wallpaper, but real. Unfiltered. No billboards. No exhaust fumes. Just the wilderness, raw and sprawling. Still, his legs were beginning to itch for movement. Garrick noticed the fidgeting. You'll get used to it. Most don't, but some do. Inigo gave a small smile. I think I'll survive. They passed a few smaller hamlets along the way, just clusters of homes with thatched roofs and fenced fields. Children stared as the caravan rolled through, some waving timidly. Inigo returned a nod through the curtain slit. By late afternoon, the caravan leader gave the order to halt. Time to rest the oxen and start camp, Garrick announced, stretching as he climbed out. Sun's still got 2 hours, but we need the firewood. Inigo hopped down from the carriage and took in their surroundings. They had stopped beside a shallow creek, with trees thick enough to provide some cover but open enough to spot anything coming. The guards immediately fanned out, checking the perimeter. One of them, an older man with a gray beard and scar down his chin, began barking orders to set up camp. Inigo walked a few steps away and crouched beside the creek. He cupped his hands, splashed his face with cold water and let out a low breath. This wasn't a respawn point. There was no fast travel. Every mile he covered, every night he endured, it all added up. This world wasn't just some game backdrop anymore. It was real. And it demanded effort. By sundown, the campfire was crackling, the oxen fed and tied, and the wagons arranged in a loose defensive semicircle. Inigo sat with his back against one of the wheels, unwrapping a piece of travel bread and jerky from his ration kit. Garrick took a spot beside him and passed a canteen of water. Sleep in shifts, the older man said. I'll take first watch. You get some rest after eating. Inigo nodded. Thank you. The next morning, a faint ping echoed in his head. Plus 50 tokens, daily login bonus. Current balance, 1863 tokens. A small, satisfied smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Good morning to you too, he muttered, mentally swiping the notification away. As he stepped around the camp, he began to take better stock of the caravan. 5 wagons, all wooden, loaded with sacks of grain, barrels of dried fish, smoked meat and cloth rolls. There were 2 merchants per wagon, some older and round-bellied, others lean and sharp-eyed, clearly used to haggling down to the last copper. Guards were scattered throughout. 8 in total, not counting Garrick and himself. 2 archers. 3 spearmen. 2 swordsmen. 1 axeman with arms the size of ham hocks and a permanent scowl on his face. It wasn't a professional escort, but they were disciplined. Alert. Each had a hardened look that told Inigo they'd seen real blood before. A few nodded at him respectfully. Some still regarded him with a curious glance, clearly aware that he wasn't just another merchant's boy. Something about the way he walked. Too upright. Too composed. Prepared. The caravan was back on the move before the sun had fully risen. The wheels groaned as they rolled over uneven paths, the morning birdsong replaced by the rhythmic creaking of wagons, hoofbeats and quiet chatter between drivers. Inigo climbed back into his carriage and resumed his seat opposite Garrick. Sleep well? The older man asked, sipping from a tin mug. Well enough, Inigo replied, looking out the window slit. Though I miss mattresses that don't involve twigs under your spine. Garrick chuckled. You'll miss the carriage more after a week in the capital. Trust me. They rode in silence for a while, the landscape shifting from dense woods to wider fields. Every now and then, Inigo's eyes swept across the trees, scanning for movement. His instincts hadn't dulled. The guards outside walked in loose formation beside the wagons. 2 out front, 1 at the rear, the rest distributed between the carts. They made for a decent moving wall. enough to dissuade small-time troublemakers. But Garrick wasn't wrong. If something serious hit them, it would fall to the few who could actually fight. Like him. The wheels rolled on, the sun climbed higher. Then, boom. An explosion shattered the calm, tearing through the morning air like a thunderclap. The second wagon, in front of theirs, burst into a ball of flame and shattered wood. The blast threw one of the oxen back in a heap, and the entire vehicle tipped sideways, groaning as it collapsed into the ditch. Their own carriage lurched violently. Inigo barely had time to brace himself before the floor tipped. Hard. Crash. The world turned sideways. Wood splintered. Curtains ripped. Something heavy slammed against his shoulder as the carriage flipped and landed on its side. Dust filled his lungs. A sharp ringing echoed in his ears. Inigo blinked, dazed, blood pounding in his skull. Then he heard it. Screams. Shouts. The clash of metal. And the shrill whistle of arrows splitting the air. They were under attack. The world came back to Inigo in fragments. Dust floating in shafts of morning light, the groan of twisted wood and the coppery tang of blood in the air. He blinked rapidly, lying sideways in the now toppled carriage. The padded seats were half crushed against the wall, and Garrick lay slumped near the opposite side, blood streaking from a gash on his forehead. The carriage had flipped, shattered planks jutting through its base like broken ribs. Inigo's ears rang. His HUD flickered erratically before stabilizing. Warning. Ambush detected. He pushed himself up, coughing from the dust. Garrick, he hissed, crawling toward the older man. Garrick stirred with a grunt. Still breathing, he muttered, clutching his side. Blast took us clean off the trail. What the hell was that? Bandits, Garrick said. Knew the risk. They must have been trailing us since yesterday. Outside, the clash of steel and the thunderous blasts of magic filled the forest. Screams followed. Shouts, then gurgled cries. One by one they were silenced. Inigo stiffened. And then silence. A heavy knock pounded on the warped side of the carriage. Well then, came a gravelly voice, too loud, too cheerful. Hope you two are still breathing in there. Let's not make this awkward. Crawl on out. We don't have all day. Neither of them moved. All right, be stubborn. Doesn't matter. My mage here's got a spell loaded up that'll turn your carriage into splinters and soup. You've got 5 seconds. Inigo glanced at Garrick. If we surrender, he said quietly, do they let us live? Garrick didn't hesitate. No. Bandits don't like witnesses. Inigo's pulse quickened. He stared at the broken ceiling, the light filtering through cracks. He had only just arrived in this world. He hadn't even seen the capital yet. He wasn't about to let some roadside thugs end his new life before it even began. No, he said coldly. He thought to himself. I didn't die once to die again. Not here. He opened the HUD. Equip. Combat uniform. Active mode. A shimmer of blue light cascaded over him, swapping his travel clothes for sleek tactical gear. Purchase confirmed. Flashbang 60 tokens. Purchase confirmed. Smoke grenade 40 tokens. Purchase confirmed. Arsense combat radar 300 tokens. New Balance 1413 tokens. The attachment materialized on the side of his M4. A small digital screen blinked to life, scanning the terrain outside. Blips. Dozens of them. Red dots circling the carriage from all sides. 25, he muttered. They're surrounding us. Garrick stared at the screen like it was divine magic. What is that? A spell. Inigo chambered around in his rifle. Something like that. Suddenly, a blade pierced through the side of the carriage, then another. Sharp steel lanced through the wood, inches from his face. More followed like spears testing the space inside. Inigo didn't wait. He turned and fired. The M4A1 barked in short, controlled bursts. Bullets punched through the planks, the red blips blinking out one by one. Shouts rang from outside. What the hell was that? Magic. He's casting something. The retaliation came swift. A ball of crackling red energy slammed into the side of the carriage, ripping through a corner and sending splinters flying. Garrick shielded his head, groaning as more dust rained down. They had seconds. Inigo pulled the pin on the flashbang, cracked open the broken carriage door and lobbed it outside. A deafening bang and a burst of white light followed. Then came the smoke grenade. A hiss. A thick cloud poured across the forest floor, swallowing everything in a gray haze. Inigo stepped out like a ghost in the fog. The HUD marked every hostile through the smoke, blips blinking red, some stunned, some charging blindly. He moved as if possessed. The first target rounded the corner. Inigo's rifle snapped up. 2 shots to the chest. 1 to the head. He pivoted. Another figure emerged from the mist, sword raised. Too slow. Inigo crouched and fired. 3 more down. The radar kept feeding data, guiding his angles. He was in his element. Another blast of magic tore through the air, singing past his shoulder. He ducked behind a wagon wheel, peeked out and dropped the caster with a single squeeze. Garrick stumbled out behind him, sword drawn but stunned. Gods above. The bandits were panicking. One called for a retreat. Another tried to rally. It didn't matter. Inigo was already moving. He slid behind a fallen barrel, picked off 2 silhouettes trying to flank, then rolled out and double-tapped the one holding a flaming orb. He didn't miss. He couldn't. The system was guiding him, sharpening his aim, enhancing his reflexes. Every motion was fluid, controlled. As if he had trained for years. 10 down. 15. The rest began to scatter. He dashed forward, eyes locked on the radar. One final blip behind the last wagon. The leader. Inigo didn't hesitate. He flanked wide, came around and met the stunned gaze of a tall, grizzled man in fur armor. What are you? What magic is that? That must be the leader. Speaking with him now would destroy his momentum. He has to be on the move always. So without hesitation he pulled the trigger. The leader fell down to the ground lifelessly and Inigo didn't stop there. He exhausted his ammunition at the fleeing bandits, reloaded and then resumed firing. And suddenly it was over. 25 red blips. All gone. Then, notification from the system started appearing before him. Plus 3,500 tokens, heroic action bonus. Plus 200 tokens, civilian saved. Plus 5,000 equals enemy killed. Inigo stood still, chest rising and falling, the rifle lowered slightly. Garrick caught up to him, eyes wide. What in the hell are you? Inigo turned slightly. Someone who really didn't want to die today. Garrick sauntered towards him and scanned the surroundings. All the bandits that attacked them were dead in just a mere moment. Typically, a veteran knight or mage would take quite some time to defeat those numbers, but Inigo did those in just a mere minute. He then looked at the thing that Inigo was holding. It was a different one compared from the ones he used during the attack in the village, yet they had the same function. It made a loud noise and the enemy was dead. Has anyone on our side survived? Inigo's question broke Garrick's train of thoughts. He looked around to see if someone on their side survived, and as his head swept around, his facial expression turned depressing. No, I don't think so. Hearing that, Inigo froze. If I didn't go to the capital, they might still be alive. Inigo stumbled back, away from the bodies, the broken wagons, the pools of blood soaking into the earth. His legs felt weak. Not from exhaustion. From guilt. Garrick noticed. Inigo. He didn't answer. Just sat down on a piece of broken timber, his weapon resting across his knees. The high of battle was gone. His adrenaline had drained. And all that remained was the hollow ache in his chest. He buried his face in his hands. Garrick approached, wincing as he limped, his side still bleeding slightly under the bandages Inigo had hastily wrapped earlier. They died because the bandits attacked. Not because of you. No, Inigo whispered. They were after us. They were waiting for this caravan. If I wasn't here. Inigo. The older man's tone was firmer now. More commanding. Inigo looked up. There was a journey to the capital. Whether you were on it or not, these people were going to be ambushed. This was always a possibility. Inigo didn't respond right away. Maybe. He said after a long moment. Maybe you're right. But it didn't erase the weight in his chest. So what now? Our only choice is to go to the capital and report the incident. But first we have to bury those who are dead. Inigo exhaled. He was just reincarnated in this world and it was already depressing. He glanced at Garrick, who had pulled a tattered cloak over one of the fallen merchants. The older man's face was drawn, his side still bleeding beneath his armor. But he moved with steady purpose, setting aside sentiment, doing what needed to be done. Inigo looked away. He knew what came next. They had to bury the dead. Start with the guards and the merchants. Garrick said with a low voice. They deserve that much. Leave the bandits. Inigo nodded mutely and got to work. The soil was softer near the creek. With a borrowed shovel from one of the wagons he began digging. Each movement felt mechanical. The blade cutting into the earth. The weight of it in his hands. The sound of it landing on the growing pile of dirt. They made simple graves. Shallow ones but enough. He laid the bodies in gently. Wrapped in blankets or cloaks when possible. Marked with stones when not. By the time they finished burying the last of the caravan guards, the sun had begun its descent. Inigo stood over the fresh mound, wiping sweat and grime from his forehead. His uniform, still active, was smudged with dirt and blood. His arms trembled from the labor, not from fear but from the weight of it all. Garrick leaned against a broken wagon, breathing heavily. Inigo nodded, staring at the rows of freshly turned earth. But he couldn't ignore the other bodies. The bandits. There were more of them, lying where they fell. Weapons still clutched in death. Some had pouches and belts sagging with coin, loot taken from God's new ware. He walked over to the nearest one, knelt and opened the pouch. Copper coins. A few silvers. A small ruby tucked inside a folded scrap of linen. Spoils of war, he told himself. He moved to the next one. Then another. He took it all. Garrick watched him, eyes narrowing but not in disapproval. Just tired understanding. Inigo just kept working. One bandit had a bag stuffed with what had to be 30 silver coins. Another had golden rings. A third carried a short dagger that was finely made, probably looted from a noble long ago. By the time he was done he had filled a leather satchel with plus 187 copper coins, plus 94 silver coins, plus 6 gold coins, plus 1 ruby gemstone. The light was fading fast. Garrick finally straightened, rubbing his side with a pained grunt. We should rest for a few hours but we can't linger long. Inigo looked up. Are we close to the capital? Half a day's march, Garrick replied. Alandra's gates are just beyond the ridge. Inigo exhaled slowly. Relief mixed with fatigue. Will you still come with me? The older man gave a short nod. That was the deal, wasn't it? I don't go back until I see you inside those gates. After that, we'll see. They found a dry patch under a tree and laid out what was left of their supplies. Inigo ate silently, chewing on dry jerky while Garrick sipped from his canteen. The quiet between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was respectful. The kind that only came after sharing blood and hardship. What are you going to tell the village? Inigo asked, facing Garrick. They have families there, right? They do. I sincerely apologize, Inigo said somberly. I know you are going to tell me that this is not my fault, but I could still feel that I am partially responsible for this. Don't be so hard on yourself. This is life, we can't control everything that happens in our life. When we arrive, we are going to tell the officials the story about what happened here, and after that I am going to return to the village. Hearing that, Inigo's eyes widened. We are separating? Garrick simply nodded. I just gave you a ride to the capital because you want to go there. So eventually we will part ways. Inigo should have expected that, but somehow, it still hit him harder than he thought it would. Garrick had been his first anchor in this new world. Gruff and blunt, yes, but also dependable. Inigo hadn't realized just how much he'd leaned on that quiet reliability until now, until the thought of walking through the capital gates alone sank in. I see. Inigo muttered. They sat there for a while longer in silence, the only sounds being the rustle of wind through leaves and the distant hoot of an owl marking the arrival of dusk. Inigo stared up at the canopy, the faintest sliver of moon beginning to emerge through the tree branches above. I won't forget what you did, he said, breaking the silence. You are welcome. They lay down soon after, keeping their weapons within reach. Inigo closed his eyes, though sleep didn't come easy. Eventually exhaustion claimed him. And by morning they were already walking again. The forest opened into a wide, hilly stretch. And at the crest of the next ridge, bathed in gold by the early sun, rose the outer walls of a sprawling city, tall, ancient, and proud. Alandra. Inigo stopped for a moment, taking it all in. It had towering walls surrounded by a moat. Typical layout for an Isekai fantasy. Inigo almost laughed at the thought. Massive stone fortifications rose high above the treeline, weathered by time but still imposing, with banners fluttering at regular intervals along the battlements. The city looked as though it had been pulled straight from a game or anime, right down to the arched drawbridge leading over dark waters and the armored guards standing in formation at the main gate. But what struck Inigo most was not the grandeur. It was the life. Even from this distance he could see lines of merchants, travelers and villagers queuing up outside the gates. A mix of wooden carts, livestock and colorful tents with city guards checking documentation and wagons before allowing entry. Inigo adjusted the strap on his satchel and took a deep breath. So this is it. Alandra. That's the place, Garrick said. Inigo and Garrick walked toward the entrance to the capital city of the Kingdom of Eldrith. As they got near the growing line of people and caravans waiting to pass through the towering main gates, the scope of the city truly came into view. Alandra was massive, larger than anything Inigo had ever seen. The outer wall loomed over them, reinforced with both stone and iron, and guarded by dozens of sentries in burnished armor. Watchtowers flanked the gates, their archers standing over and kept watch. But it wasn't the city's size that caught Inigo's eye. It was the people. He watched as a pair of tall figures in cloaks passed ahead of them. As the wind tugged their hoods down, he saw furred ears twitch from beneath the fabric, beastmen. One had a short feline tail, the other long lupin ears. They weren't alone either. A burly merchant in line ahead of them had scales along his neck and a forked tongue that flicked out while he counted his coins. Further down the line, a young girl with pale blue hair and eyes like glass crystals giggled as she juggled pebbles in the air with magic. Inigo blinked. Beastmen. Demi-humans. Magic users. Colored hair. Anthropomorphic features. All of it was straight out of the fantasy games and anime he used to binge. He really was in another world. He let his gaze drift, taking it all in. The colors, the variety, the strange energy in the air. The people here weren't bound by the sameness of his old world. Pink hair, silver hair, azure skin, even floating familiars. Everything was possible. Everything was real. This was the beauty of another world. But beauty didn't mean safety. Inigo's smile faded as his mind drifted back to the bodies in the woods. The blood. The screaming. The sound of his rifle. The faces of the fallen guards and merchants. That reality hadn't changed. This world had its magic and wonder, but it also had death, cruelty and chaos. He had experienced it firsthand, and no amount of strange hair colors or beast ears would erase that. They waited in silence as the line slowly moved forward. Occasionally, a guard called someone forward for inspection. Some were let through quickly. Others were pulled aside for questioning or baggage checks. When it was finally their turn, a pair of guards stepped forward, halberds in hand, one of them raising a gloved hand. Halt. State your name, purpose of entry, and show identification. Garrick didn't flinch. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a worn parchment. I am from the village of Valebrook. We were supposed to arrive here with caravans carrying grain for tax and trade. We were attacked on the Southmoor Road, ambushed by bandits. This one, he gestured toward Inigo beside him, he is part of the escort as well. Ambushed by bandits? The guard looked behind them but he saw nothing that indicated that he was coming with a caravan. Where are they? They are dead, Garrick simply replied, shocking the guard. I see, you may now enter, the guard said, though his expression had tightened. But first you'll both need to come with us. Captain Elias will want a full report on the incident. Garrick nodded without protest. Of course. The guard raised a hand and signaled to another nearby. Moments later, a soldier in lighter armor appeared, exchanging a few words with the first guard before gesturing for them to follow. This way. The guard post is just through the inner gate. Inigo and Garrick stepped past the towering city walls and into Alandra proper. The noise of the capital, vendors hawking wares, the clatter of hooves, the distant chiming of bells, grew louder as they followed their escort through a side passage off the main avenue. While the main crowd flowed toward the markets and residential roads, they turned left, heading down a quieter lane lined with government buildings. Soon they arrived at the city guard post, a two-story stone structure with iron-banded doors and red banners bearing the insignia of Eldritha's watch, a winged lion with a sword in its jaws. The escort opened the door and led them through the main hall, then up a flight of stairs into a modest but orderly office. A large desk sat near the center, papers neatly stacked beside a few maps pinned to a board behind it. Sitting at the desk was a man in steel half-plate armor with a red cape draped over one shoulder. His eyes lifted from a ledger. "Captain Elias," the escort announced. These people were from Valebrook who were attacked from the Southmoor Road. They were the only two survivors and the rest were killed. "I see, I will take it from here. You two sit down." Garrick and Inigo took their respective seats and waited for the instruction of the captain. "So, you guys survived an ambush attack by bandits?" Captain Elias asked, straight to the point. "Yeah, we killed them," Garrick replied, not wanting to gain unwanted attention towards Inigo, who was the one responsible for taking all the bandits. "You must be skilled for doing such a feat, and I apologize for your loss. Rest assured that we will look into it immediately by sending a team to the place where the incident happened." "Thank you." Garrick lowered his head and Inigo did the same. "Now what's your business here?" "I am supposed to escort a caravan here, but since we were attacked my job shifted to escorting this young gentleman here in this city," Garrick answered. The captain glanced at Inigo. "You are not part of the escort, huh?" "He is more like a normal citizen, a wandering one to be exact," Garrick chimed in Inigo's place. "Where are you from?" Garrick asked, his eyes not leaving Inigo. "I suffered from memory loss, so I don't know where I am from," Inigo replied, not wanting to reveal that he is from another world. "I just want a place to stay to recover from the shock I have gotten into, and I believe that this is the perfect place to recuperate." The captain listened to his story and was seemingly convinced. He hummed in thought. "Very well, we will let you in. You just have to fill up some documents so that we can create an identification that you are a visitor." "Can I be a citizen here?" Inigo asked. "You will have to ask the Immigration Bureau for that," Captain Elias replied, adjusting the papers in front of him. "But that's a long process. For now, we'll register you as a visitor under temporary residence. It'll give you enough freedom to move around the capital, work small jobs, and if you're serious, register with the Adventurers Guild." Inigo nodded. "That's fine. I'll start with that." The captain pulled out a blank form and slid it across the desk along with a quill. "Name, age, origin. Put whatever you remember. If there are blanks, we'll mark it accordingly. You'll get your temporary ID within the day." Inigo picked up the quill and began writing, his penmanship neat, though his heart beat a little faster with every word he filled in. For a moment, it all felt surreal. Sitting here in a new world, writing out his name like a normal person applying for residency. No one here knew about Earth. No one knew about the system he had access to. No one knew what he was capable of. And for now he wanted to keep it that way. When he finished, he slid the form back. Elias looked it over, stamped it with a hot seal that left the insignia of Eldrith burned into the corner, and passed it to one of his aides. "This will be processed within the hour. In the meantime, you're both free to move around the city, but stay out of trouble. We'll notify the guild and the immigration office of your presence. You'll get a visitor's emblem on a leather cord. Wear it at all times." Garrick rose and gave a short nod. "Understood." Inigo stood beside him, tucking the stamped form under his arm. "Thank you for your time, Captain." Elias waved them off. "Welcome to Alandra." Inigo and Garrick walked out of the room with Inigo closing the door behind him. "Inigo," Garrick spoke. "Just as the guard says, you are free to roam around the capital for an hour. You have to return here after that time, as you will be given an identification." "You're not coming with me?" Inigo asked, glancing at him. Garrick shook his head. "I am in no mood to walk around the capital. I will just stay here and wait. If you have any questions about the town, you can simply ask the locals." Inigo nodded. "Understood, sir. I'll be back shortly." With that, he stepped out onto the main street, and the full scale of the capital finally unfolded before him. Alandra was, in a word, majestic. The streets were immaculately clean, white cobblestone tiles polished smooth from years of use, laid out in perfect, symmetrical grids. There wasn't a hint of garbage anywhere. The air smelled of fresh bread, spices, and a trace of lavender from the flower beds arranged in brass planters along the avenues. He glanced up and was awestruck by the architecture. Towering stone buildings lined the roads, a mix of medieval charm and neoclassical elegance. Ornate columns, wide archways, wrought iron balconies with blooming flowers. Each structure looked like it belonged on a postcard. The roofs were tiled in deep blue or red, contrasting with the pale walls that glowed softly under the morning sun. Alandra didn't feel like a city out of a game. It felt real. As he wandered further, he came upon a broad plaza lined with silver lamp posts and marble benches. A large fountain stood in the center, water cascading down from a sculpture of an armored angel holding a sword. Dozens of people moved through the square, traders, nobles, and commoners alike. What caught his attention, however, was a particular group that stood out from the rest. They wore matching uniforms, dark blazers over crisp white shirts, adorned with golden trim and house insignias. The girls wore pleated skirts with high socks or elegant dresses, while the boys were neatly dressed in tailored slacks and polished shoes. Each carried a staff or book of some kind. Magic students, he realized. They chatted in pairs or small groups, laughter ringing out now and then. One girl, with long violet hair and striking emerald eyes, adjusted the ribbon at her collar while her friend conjured a tiny flame in her palm. Another was reviewing a floating parchment that scrolled itself as she walked. Inigo's jaw nearly dropped. It was like walking into an anime scene. These people, he murmured to himself. They're attending a magic academy, aren't they? They should be. After all, what's the use of that uniform? He wanted to learn more, but this wasn't the time. There was still more of the city to explore. He turned away and headed deeper into the commercial district. He followed the signs, many of them in ornate script that the system helpfully translated for him, and eventually found what he was looking for. The Adventurers Guild. The building was massive, taller than any other structure on the block, built from dark stone with stained glass windows and a grand set of double doors. The crest above the entrance showed a sword and staff crossed over a golden sun. It wasn't just a building, it was a monument. He pushed the doors open. The moment he stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted completely. The air was thick with the smell of roasted meat, alcohol, sweat, and smoke from oil lamps. A dozen voices overlapped in a low, constant hum. Inside was a large tavern-style space with wooden floors, beams across the ceiling, and long tables filled with armored adventurers, robed mages, and cloaked rogues. Some laughed loudly. Others argued over maps. A few were passed out over their mugs. And to the left, tucked into a large counter with polished brass trim, stood a registration area. 3 receptionists sat behind it, handling paperwork for a growing line of hopeful adventurers. Behind them was a massive corkboard pinned with parchment notices, quests. Inigo walked forward, trying not to gawk too much. A bard played soft music from the corner, while a waitress carried tankards to a table full of mercenaries recounting some monster hunt with exaggerated hand gestures. He made his way to the counter and waited his turn. Ahead of him was a dwarf in scale armor arguing over a failed escort mission, and behind him, a tall elven woman adjusted the blade on her back. When his turn came, the receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. She was a woman in her late 20s, dressed in a blue guild uniform, blonde hair tied neatly behind her head and a feather quill in her hand. Even the receptionist here has model-like beauty. "Welcome to the Elandra Adventurers Guild," she said. "Are you here to post a quest, turn one in, or register?" Inigo gave a slight bow. "I'd like to register." "First-time registrant?" she asked. "Yes." She pulled out a clipboard and placed a form in front of him. "You'll need to fill out some basic details. Name, age, known skills or magic, any combat experience. It's mostly for internal records. Once approved, you'll receive a guild card and be added to our system. Starting rank is bronze." "Wait, I won't have to touch some magical orb to determine my rank or power?" Inigo asked, recalling every RPG and anime trope where the hero's stats were revealed in a glowing room with dramatic flair. The receptionist chuckled softly, shaking her head. "No, not here. That's only done at some noble-run institutions or specialized mage guilds. The Adventurers Guild doesn't assess based on innate mana or bloodline potential." She tapped the form gently. "We rank adventurers based on one thing: results. The quests you complete, the danger you face, the way you handle yourself in the field. That's what matters here. Plenty of successful adventurers don't have an ounce of mana in them. Fighters, rogues, hunters. Some never cast a single spell their entire careers." Inigo let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "That's good to know. Magic helps," she added, "but it's not everything. If you've got skill, guts, and a little luck, you'll rise through the ranks like anyone else." He nodded and began filling out the form she'd handed him. Name, Inigo. Age, 17. Skills, Ranged combat, tactical decision-making, battlefield awareness. Magic? None. He hesitated briefly, then scribbled combat proficiency, non-magical. She glanced at his entries as he handed it back. You mentioned you had some combat experience? Yes, he replied. I see, that's an advantage. Now for the final step, you will just have to pay for the registration fee, the receptionist said, sliding a small brass tray forward. Standard registration cost is 2 silver coins. This covers your guild ID, administrative processing, and your provisional ranking as a bronze adventurer. Inigo reached into his satchel and pulled out a few of the coins he had been given back in Valebrook. He counted out 2 silver coins and placed them on the tray. 2 silver coins. Remaining balance, 6 gold coins, 92 silver coins. 187 copper coins. Thank you, the receptionist said as she scooped up the coins. She turned behind her, called for a blank guild card, and began to fill in the details by hand with quick practice strokes. A soft hum resonated as she pressed the card into a shallow metal mold and channeled a bit of magic into it, just enough to seal the inscription with a faint shimmer. She then attached a leather cord through a hole at the top and handed it to Inigo. Congratulations, Inigo, she said, her smile widening. You're now officially registered with the Elandra Adventurers Guild. Wear this badge whenever you're taking a quest or interacting with guild personnel. It also serves as your proof of status across most cities and towns affiliated with the Adventurers Network. Inigo accepted the badge with both hands, bowing slightly. Thank you. Now, she continued, pointing to a wide board behind her, that's the job board. Quests are categorized by difficulty and rank. You can take on most jobs within your level, but if you're feeling confident, you can request permission to attempt a higher tier quest. Just don't get in over your head. He nodded again. Understood. And if you ever need lodging, gear upgrades, or party formation, the guild's facilities cover those too. We also have a cafeteria through those doors to your right, she added, gesturing toward a rowdy dining area where mugs clinked and plates clattered. Good food, cheap drinks, and stories that aren't always exaggerated. Inigo gave a small chuckle. Sounds like a place I'll be seeing a lot of. Most do, she said with a wink. With his new badge hanging from his neck, Inigo stepped aside to let the next registrant through. The leather cord felt light, but the weight of the opportunity now in his hands was unmistakable. He turned to study the bustling interior again. Mercenaries comparing scars, spellcasters idly dueling with flickers of flame and wind magic, and beastkin lounging with their feet kicked up as they debated their latest mission failures. He was officially part of this world now. Not just a visitor but a player. And this was just the beginning. He moved toward the job board, scanning the rows of parchment notices pinned under color-coded tags. Bronze tier quests were listed in green, mostly simple tasks: herb gathering, pest extermination, lost pet recovery. But a few caught his eye: escort duties, monster subjugation, and even the rare bounty listing. Before he could read further, a voice called out beside him. First time here? Inigo turned to see a young man, maybe a year or two older than him, leaning casually against a wooden beam. He wore light leather armor reinforced with metal studs, a short sword at his hip and a bow slung over one shoulder. His tousled brown hair gave him a roguish air, but his tone was friendly. Yeah, Inigo said, offering a polite nod. Just registered. Nice. Name's Colm, the man said, holding out a hand. Bronze rank like you. Don't let the veterans intimidate you. Half of them were scrubbing latrines or getting stabbed by kobolds a few months ago. Inigo shook his hand. Inigo. Good to meet you. Looking for your first quest? Trying to figure out what I can handle. Colm grinned. Advice. Pick one that sounds boring. Easy way to learn how the system works, how the paperwork goes, and how long it takes to get paid. Trust me, you don't want to screw up your first job and get blacklisted. Good point. I did a rat hunt in the eastern granaries my first week. Smelled awful. Got bit twice. But I got paid. Inigo laughed. Sounds like it built character. That's one way to put it. Or, perhaps we can team up and take subjugation quests together. Is he serious, inviting someone to take on a quest together? And what's more, this is a common red flag in all light novels, anime, manga, and other titles. Why? Because this could be a setup trap to a newbie who knows nothing about how the system works and get robbed at the end. He kept his expression neutral, but inwardly his thoughts were racing. Better to play it safe. Thanks for the offer, Inigo said, offering a polite smile, but I can't take any quests just yet. I just registered and haven't received my official ID. Colm blinked. Oh, right. Yeah, you need that to actually take anything off the board. Yeah, Inigo nodded. And besides, I think I'll start solo. Just wanted to look around for now and see what kind of jobs the guild offers. Colm scratched the back of his neck, looking slightly embarrassed. Fair enough. Probably better to get a feel for things first. Sorry if I came off too eager. I just figured a team-up would be less of a headache, you know? No offense taken, Inigo replied calmly. It's a solid suggestion. Maybe next time. Sure thing. I'll be around. Colm gave a short wave and stepped back toward one of the nearby tables where a few other adventurers were eating and chatting. Inigo let out a soft breath. Crisis averted. He turned his attention back to the quest board. The parchment postings were a mix of handwritten notices and official stamped forms. Some were practically begging for help. Simple jobs like collecting herbs, cleaning out goblin nests, or escorting traders through nearby forest roads. He tilted his head, studying a few of the bronze tag listings more closely. Request: boar culling in Southridge Farm, bronze tier. Wild boars have been trampling crops and attacking livestock. Requesting one or more adventurers to help drive them off or kill them. Reward: 5 silver coins per confirmed kill. Bring tusks as proof. Request: lost heirloom, bronze tier. A merchant lost a silver ring near the riverside while unloading goods. Believed to be in the shallow waters. Reward: 3 silver coins upon return. Request: goblin tracks spotted, bronze tier. A hunter found tracks near the border trail. Guild requests a scout or fighter to confirm presence and eliminate if possible. Reward: 8 silver coins plus hazard bonus if den is discovered. Nothing he couldn't handle. He stepped back, arms crossed. Once he got that ID, he'd pick one of these and try it solo. He needed to test his gear in the field again, calibrate his weapon responses in a live scenario. And honestly, he needed to see how this world fought. What was the standard? How strong were these monsters, really? One thing was certain. He wasn't about to charge into the deep end without knowing how deep it was. Not this time. A soft chime echoed from above the counter. The receptionist from earlier had just called out someone else's name. Inigo glanced at the clock-like device mounted near the entrance. He still had about 30 minutes left before he needed to return to the guard station to receive his temporary ID. Enough time to grab a drink and observe a little more of the adventurer crowd. He turned away from the job board and headed toward the cafeteria. The clatter of wooden mugs, the sizzling of food, and the buzz of half-drunken stories made it feel like something between a pub and a community hall. It smelled strongly of grilled meat and bread. Honestly, not a bad mix. He ordered a simple meat skewer and a glass of cold spring water, paid with a single copper coin, and found a seat near a window that overlooked the main street. Adventurers came and went. Some were rugged and older, others young and barely past their teens. Mages in cloaks, warriors in dented armor, even a few beastkin with tails twitching behind their stools. It was a lively place filled with people chasing gold, glory, or maybe just survival. Inigo bit into the skewer. Crunchy on the outside. Juicy on the inside. Not bad. Inigo finished the last bite of his skewer, wiped his fingers with the cloth napkin provided, then glanced at the guild's bustling main hall one more time. He had some time left before he had to return to the guard post. And something had been gnawing at the back of his mind. But he still didn't know if he had any. He had fired guns, summoned armor, bought gear through a system that didn't rely on mana. But what if there was something hidden? A dormant trait? A magical spark the system wasn't built to detect? It was worth looking into. He stood up from his seat and made his way back toward the reception counter. Luckily, the same receptionist from earlier was still there, handling a few forms. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight streaming in through a stained glass panel behind her. When she looked up and met his eyes, her smile returned, polite and professional. "Back so soon?" she asked, resting her quill in its inkwell. "Do you already want to pick a quest?" Inigo shook his head. "Not yet. I actually had a question." "Of course." He hesitated briefly. "Is there a place in the city where I can get my magic assessed? Like, to check if I even have any?" The receptionist's brow lifted slightly as if surprised, but not unkindly. Well, most people go to the Royal Academy of Magical Sciences to have that tested. The entrance exam includes a basic mana aptitude assessment. That's how many young nobles and magic-capable civilians find out. Inigo frowned a little. I don't plan on enrolling. Not yet anyway. I was hoping for a place I could visit, just to get tested. She tapped her chin with a gloved finger. In that case, your best bet would be the Imperial Mage Department. It's a government-run institution. They handle magical regulations, artifact certification and yes, mana assessments for independent individuals. Perfect, Inigo said. Where can I find it? Head north from the Adventurers Guild toward the administrative quarter. It's one of the tallest buildings there, white stone, 2 towers with silver-tipped spires. You won't miss it. He gave her a respectful nod. Thank you. I'll check it out. She smiled. Good luck. With that, Inigo stepped out of the guild and made his way along the route she described. The administrative quarter of Alandra had a different feel compared to the market roads and plazas he had passed earlier. It was quieter, with fewer stalls and more government buildings flanked by patrols in polished armor. The stonework here was more ornate, less utilitarian, more ceremonial. Statues lined the road, great mages, royal guards, past monarchs with hands raised in stone benediction. And sure enough, he spotted it. The Imperial Mage Department building stood like a fortress dedicated to intellect. Smooth white walls glistened under the sun, 2 towers rising above the neighboring buildings, each capped in silver dome-like spires. Between them was a massive archway with an emblem carved into its face, an open eye over a starburst wand. Inigo approached the main gate where 2 guards stood at attention. Both wore deep blue tabards over chainmail, and each carried a pole arm tipped with a glowing blue crystal. He slowed his steps and stopped a respectful distance away. I'd like to inquire about a mana assessment, he said. One of the guards looked him over. Your name? Inigo. Purpose? Personal assessment. I just want to see if I have any magical aptitude. The guard gave a small nod, then raised a hand to stop him. Do you have identification? Inigo hesitated. Not yet. The guard's expression remained neutral, but his tone grew firm. I'm afraid no one may enter the department grounds without valid identification. It's regulation. Inigo sighed internally. Of course. Understood, he said, stepping back. You may return once you have proper documentation, the other guard added. Got it. Thank you. As he turned and walked away, he didn't feel too disappointed. He had expected some kind of formality. Still, the fact that he now knew where to go was already a step forward. Besides, once he had his ID, nothing would stop him from confirming what he was capable of.